It was a quiet Sunday morning, the kind of day where time seemed to slow down, where the air was crisp and still, and birds chirped lazily from the branches of the tall oak trees lining the suburban sidewalks. On the surface, nothing seemed unusual. The streets were calm, the sky was soft with clouds, and the small town of Meadow Creek was waking up slowly, just like it always did. But for Vanessa Blake, today wasn't just any day. She stood in her front yard, tugging her coat tighter around her as the breeze picked up. Her dogs, Bear and Delta, circled her legs patiently, their dark eyes sharp and alert. Both were German shepherds, solidly built and moving with the kind of grace that hinted at something more than your average house pets. To a stranger, they might have just looked well-trained, but anyone who knew even a little bit about military, K9s could tell right away. These dogs were something else. Vanessa, a tall black woman in her early 30s, had always kept to herself. After serving 10 years as a trauma nurse attached to military units overseas, she had returned home to peace and quiet, or so she thought. Bear and Delta weren't just her companions. They were her family, her protectors, veterans in their own right. Their bond was strong, forged through shared loss, loyalty, and silent promises that no harm would ever come her way again. Not if they could help it. She never expected trouble here, not in Meadow Creek. The neighborhood wasn't exactly diverse. Vanessa knew that. She wasn't blind to the stares or the whispered conversations when she moved in last fall. Some of it was curiosity. Some of it wasn't. But she ignored it, focusing on her small business, her dogs, and finding a sense of normal again. But hate doesn't always scream. Sometimes it watches. Waits. Across town, a group of young men in a matte black pickup truck cruised slowly past houses like they didn't belong. 3 of them, white, loud, and proud, had developed a reputation for stirring trouble. People whispered that they'd been involved in other incidents, but nothing ever stuck. They always managed to vanish before police got involved. Their arrogance festered in the quiet corners of town, and today they'd picked their next target, Vanessa. She had no idea that they had been watching her, that her presence, her confidence, her very existence in a space they thought didn't belong to her was eating them up inside. The idea of a strong black woman living on what they considered their street, walking with 2 big dogs, head held high, had triggered something ugly. Vanessa's morning walk began just like any other. She locked the front door, whispered to Bear and Delta, "Let's go," and headed down the sidewalk. The dogs stayed close, perfectly in step, ears twitching, every muscle ready. They were calm, but alert. Always. Half a block down, she noticed. The truck. It had slowed beside her. The engine rumbled low, like a growl. She glanced over and saw the tinted window roll down. For a split second, she locked eyes with the driver, a lean, pale man with a backward cap and a look that made her stomach tighten. He smiled, but not the kind of smile that means hello. Bear stiffened. Delta's ears flattened. Vanessa kept walking. From the truck, they called out to her. At first it was laughter, mocking, juvenile. Then came the words, ugly words, the kind that scrape the air and leave it sour. She didn't respond. She didn't even look back. Her hands remained loose at her sides, but her heart was beginning to race. Her eyes flicked to her dogs, and both were watching the truck now, watching and waiting. Then the truck pulled ahead and disappeared. She exhaled slowly. Maybe that was it. Just kids being cruel. Maybe they were bored, trying to scare her. Still, something didn't sit right. She decided to cut the walk short. Turn around. She'd barely taken 3 steps when she heard the engine again. It came back faster this time. No taunts, no smiles, just screeching tires and a sudden stop inches from the curb. 3 of them jumped out. No masks, no hesitation. They weren't here to talk. Vanessa froze. Time slowed. The one in front moved quickly, closing the gap between them with a bat in his hand, eyes wide and wild. Another one circled to the side, trying to block her path. The third stayed by the truck, watching, maybe the lookout. This wasn't random. This was meant to scare her, or worse. "Where do you think you're going?" The leader sneered. Vanessa didn't answer. Her hands remained at her sides, steady. She didn't scream, didn't run, she only said one word. Bear. It was quiet, barely a whisper, but it was enough. The massive shepherd lunged forward, placing himself directly between Vanessa and the attacker. Delta flanked the side, her posture rigid, her growl low and deadly. These weren't dogs barking to scare someone off. These were trained soldiers reading the room, identifying the threat and preparing to neutralize. The leader raised the bat. He never got the chance to swing. In a blur of movement, Bear surged forward, his powerful legs launching him straight toward the weapon. He didn't bite. Not yet. He just knocked the man off balance, forcing him back with shocking precision. Delta didn't wait. She locked eyes with the second guy and stepped toward him slowly. Head low, warning him, don't try it. Vanessa didn't move. She didn't have to. The men were stunned. Their smirks melted into something else. Confusion. Fear. This wasn't what they expected. They thought they were picking on an easy target. A woman walking alone, but they weren't just facing her. They were facing two trained K9 operatives who'd once walked through landmines and chaos in foreign lands, and they were protecting her now. Call them off, one of them yelled, backing toward the truck. Vanessa tilted her head, her voice calm and flat. You came here. Now finish what you started. The man on the ground scrambled to his feet, his bat abandoned. Delta inched forward, teeth bared now. Bear's ears twitched, awaiting command. But Vanessa just watched. And then a voice called from across the street, "Hey, what's going on?" An older neighbor was stepping out onto his porch. A few more curtains were moving in the windows down the block. The illusion of privacy, the protection of doing something horrible without witnesses, was starting to collapse. The men panicked. They jumped into the truck and sped off, tires screeching, hearts pounding. Vanessa didn't chase. Bear and Delta didn't move until she gave them the signal. Only when the truck was gone did they relax, standing silently by her side once again. She knelt, gently stroking both of them. Her voice shook slightly now, not with fear, but with fury. "Good boys," she whispered. What they didn't know, what those men couldn't have imagined, was that Vanessa didn't just rescue these dogs from the military. She had trained them. She had worked alongside them. These weren't just ex-military dogs. They were family, and together they were unstoppable. But the story wasn't over, because as Vanessa turned to walk back home, phone in hand to call the police, her day, already strange and shaken, was about to take another unexpected turn. Half a mile away, a city bus slowed to a stop, its doors opening with a sigh. A young black teen, dressed in a hoodie and sneakers, stood up and glanced around. He noticed the pregnant white woman struggling to stand, gripping the overhead rail for balance. Without a word, he moved toward her, gently touching her elbow. "Take my seat," he said quietly. The woman looked up, startled. She smiled, touched by his kindness, and slowly sat down, letting out a breath of relief. As the bus rolled on, she reached into her purse, pulled out a folded piece of paper, and handed it to the teen with a soft, "Thank you." He didn't open it until later. And when he did, it changed everything, forever. And just like Vanessa's quiet fight against hatred revealed more strength than anyone expected, this simple act of kindness from a teenage boy was about to ripple through lives in ways no one could have seen coming. But that part of the story comes next. The teen sat quietly near the back of the bus, the folded note in his hand still unopened. His name was Jalen, 17, smart, thoughtful, and raised by a single mother who worked 2 jobs just to keep the lights on. He didn't have much, but he had something most people overlooked: manners. His mother made sure of that. She used to say, "Being kind is free. Give it even when the world forgets how." So when he gave up his seat for that pregnant woman, it wasn't some grand gesture to him. It was just the right thing to do, but this note, it made his fingers twitch. Something about the way she had pressed it into his hand. her eyes locking with his, her voice a little shaky, like she knew something he didn't. It stuck with him. He turned the paper over slowly, unfolding it with care. The words were handwritten, a little messy but clear, and as he read them, his breath caught. "You don't know me, but I know someone who's been watching you. You've been chosen. Please don't throw this away. Look under seat 24B when you get off." Jalen blinked. He read the note again, heart starting to pound. What was this, a joke, some weird prank? He glanced toward the woman, but she was already getting off the bus. She gave him one last look, one that didn't say thank you, but something more. Urgent. He stood up as his stop neared. The words replayed in his mind, seat 24B. The bus was half empty now, and the driver wasn't paying attention. He walked down the aisle, counting seats. 22, 23, 24. He crouched low, feeling under the cushion. Nothing. Then he reached a little deeper. His fingers brushed against something taped to the underside, a small, flat metal object, cold. He pulled it loose, heart hammering now. It was a key. Not just any key. It looked old, heavy, brass maybe. The kind you'd see in a movie opening a hidden room or a safety deposit box. What was this? Why him? Back on the other side of town, Vanessa had finally finished her call with the police. An officer had taken down her statement over the phone, promising a patrol car would swing by. But she knew how that worked. By the time anyone showed up, those men would be long gone. And the system wasn't always fast to move when women like her called for help. Still shaken, she leaned against her front door, watching Bear and Delta pace the living room like restless guardians. She didn't feel safe anymore. Not truly. Not here. Her eyes drifted to the wall where a photo of her late brother hung. He was in uniform, smiling, standing beside Bear during deployment. That memory, his sacrifice, still felt fresh. He'd saved lives overseas. Vanessa had too. But here in her own country, she couldn't walk her dogs without being hunted by hate. She wasn't the only one being watched, though. Across several parts of the city, strange things were happening. Quiet things that most people missed. Unmarked. Cars parked a little too long on street corners. Drones hovering just above the rooftops. Few people began noticing their phones glitching or their cameras switching on by themselves. No one could explain it. But someone, somewhere, was paying close attention. Jalen had taken the key home, hiding it inside an old sock in his drawer. He hadn't told anyone, not even his mom. But he couldn't stop thinking about the note. You've been chosen. Chosen for what? That night, he couldn't sleep, and he wasn't the only one. Vanessa lay awake too, scrolling through her old military contacts, wondering if she should reach out. She hadn't spoken to them in years, not since her discharge. But something about today, it felt planned, targeted. This wasn't some random act by bored punks. They had known her name. One of them had shouted it. She hadn't told anyone her full name. Not in this town. Who were they, and how did they know? Meanwhile, the woman from the bus, Anna, was back in her modest apartment on the west side. She moved carefully, hand pressed against her belly. The baby wasn't due for months, but she had to be smart. Every move she made now mattered. She'd taken a risk giving that boy the note, but she didn't have a choice. She wasn't just some woman looking for a seat. She was someone with secrets. Secrets tied to powerful people who didn't want them known. Jalen, she had been told, was important. He had a kind of heart that couldn't be bought. That made him dangerous. Anna had once worked inside a private security firm, one that operated in gray areas where morality was often the first thing to get buried. She had seen files on people, whole lives documented and tracked. Jalen's name had come up, not because he was famous or rich, but because he was consistent, kind, honest, sharp, the kind of person the world needed, but most overlooked. She didn't know the full reason, only that someone high up had flagged him, and someone else had protected him, for now, but that protection was wearing thin. The attack on Vanessa. The appearance of the key. These weren't coincidences, they were part of something bigger. A movement happening in the shadows, a push to destabilize, using fear, division, silence. And yet, in the middle of it all, were small acts of courage. A woman walking with her dogs, a teen giving up his seat. A note passed hand to hand. But courage alone wouldn't be enough, not with what was coming. Jalen paced his room long after midnight. The key sat in his palm now, heavy with questions. He stared at it, willing it to speak. But keys don't talk. They open things, hide things, protect or reveal, and he had no idea which one this would be. He didn't know he was being watched. From the rooftop across his street, a lens adjusted slightly, tracking his window. A quiet voice over a radio said, "He's got it." Another voice replied, "Good. Phase 2 begins now." And far away, Anna sat up suddenly, a chill running down her spine. She knew that look in the boy's eyes. She remembered it from when she was recruited. She just hoped he'd make a different choice, because soon Jalen would have to decide what kind of world he wanted to fight for, and what he was willing to lose along the way. The clock ticked past. A.m. outside. The wind howled softly. Inside, secrets stirred, and the storm had only just begun. By morning, the sky was gray and overcast, as if it too sensed that something heavy was in the air. Jalen barely touched his cereal. He kept glancing at the drawer in his room, the one where the strange brass key now rested beneath a pile of folded socks. His mom, who was always busy rushing between work shifts, noticed his silence. "You good, baby?" she asked while grabbing her keys. Jalen nodded. Just tired. But the truth was, his mind hadn't rested all night. He kept seeing that woman's face, the way she looked at him, not with gratitude, but with intent. That note wasn't just a thank you. It was a message, a warning, a call. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, Vanessa walked the perimeter of her small yard, Bear and Delta trailing at her heels. She had installed a new lock on the gate. 2 locks, actually. She hadn't heard back from the police. Not that she expected much. She sent an email to a private contact, someone she hadn't spoken to in over 3 years. Just 3 words. "They're back. Help." The reply came minutes later. "Don't move. Watch the dogs. You'll get more instructions." And that reply alone made her hands tremble, not out of fear, but out of memory. The last time she saw that contact's name was during her last mission, a Black Ops extraction no one ever officially logged. If that person was reaching back now, it meant what happened yesterday wasn't random at all. It meant someone was pulling old files, opening old wounds. Elsewhere, Anna sat in a small cafe downtown, a knit hat pulled over her curly hair. She had a burner phone on the table and a hard drive in her purse. The phone buzzed with a coded message. "Key has been activated. Protocol red in motion." She swallowed hard. She had warned them that using Jalen might be risky. He was still a kid, no matter how kind-hearted or observant. But the program didn't wait for people to be ready. It only moved when it had to. Her job now was to protect him without being seen. A man in a dark coat entered the cafe, sat at the far end. No greeting, no eye contact. Anna stood up slowly and walked past him, slipping the hard drive into his coat pocket in a practiced motion. She didn't stop walking. The information on that drive, names, photos, hidden reports, could trigger a national scandal. But it wasn't just about secrets anymore. It was about exposure. Someone inside the program had gone rogue, and that meant no one was safe, especially not Vanessa, especially not Jalen. Back in school, Jalen felt off. Everything looked the same. Hallways buzzing, lockers slamming, teachers repeating the usual. But he wasn't hearing it right. He was stuck inside his thoughts. Even when his friend Malik tapped his shoulder in chemistry class asking if he wanted to hang out after school, Jalen just shook his head. "I got something I gotta do," he mumbled. Malik raised an eyebrow. "You good, bro? You look like you seen a ghost." Jalen hesitated, then said, "You ever feel like Like you're being tested and you don't even know the rules? Malik blinked. Man, that's called high school. They laughed, but Jalen's smile didn't reach his. After class, he skipped the bus and walked instead. The key was in his pocket, growing heavier by the hour. His feet carried him downtown toward the only place he thought might make sense, the old abandoned train station. He didn't know why he thought of it, just a gut feeling. And the words in the note, "You've been chosen. Look under seat 24B. Station. Seats. Numbers." It clicked somewhere deep in his brain. The building had been shut down for years. Cracked windows, boards nailed unevenly. But the front entrance wasn't completely sealed. He slipped through a side opening and stepped into the dark, empty space. Dust floated in the light streaming from the broken roof. Rows of old benches still lined the walls, covered in grime and spiderwebs. He counted them slowly, heart thudding. 21, 22, 23, 24. He crouched by the bench, heart racing. There was no paper this time, no easy clue. But when he touched the wood beneath the seat, something clicked. Literally, a hidden latch. He pulled it. A small drawer popped open. Inside was a folded map, a flash drive, and another note. This one typed, "If you're reading this, it means she reached you in time. You have a choice. You can walk away now and forget all of this. But if you want the truth about your city, your school, even your own past, plug in the drive and follow the coordinates. But be warned, once you see, you can't unsee." Jalen sat there frozen. Truth about his past? He slid the flash drive into his pocket, folded the map, and stood up slowly. As he turned to leave, he didn't notice the small red light blinking in. The corner of the room. A hidden camera. Watching. At the same time, Vanessa's phone lit up with a new message. Coordinates. A place just outside the city, near an old weapons facility that had been decommissioned years ago. Her fingers curled, tight around the phone. She knew what this meant. Someone wanted her to go back to the beginning, where it all started. Bear and Delta sat at attention, sensing her mood. "We're not running this time," she whispered to them. And miles away, in a tech lab buried beneath, a legitimate warehouse, a man in a suit watched several screens. One showed Jalen walking out of the train station. Another showed Vanessa loading her truck. And a third, blurred and flickering, showed a document marked Operation Dog Walker. He made a call. "We have a problem. They're moving too. Fast," a female voice responded on the line, low and firm. "Then slow them down." He stared at Jalen's face on the screen. "He's just a kid." "All the more reason to handle it quietly," she replied, "before the story spreads." Outside, rain had begun to fall, soft and steady, coating the city like a warning. People moved through their routines unaware. But beneath the calm, something dangerous was shifting. Secrets long buried were crawling back to the surface. And 3 people, one teen with a key, one woman with military dogs, and one agent on the run, were standing in its path. The rain hadn't let up by nightfall. The city glistened with puddles under flickering streetlights, and everything felt slower, heavier, like the calm before a storm. Jalen sat at his desk, staring at the flash drive turning over in his fingers like it weighed more than it should. His mom had gone to bed early after a double shift, and the house was quiet save for the steady tick of the wall clock. He plugged the flash drive into his laptop, the screen lighting up with a single folder. No name, just a red symbol, something like a broken circle with jagged edges. He clicked. At first, it was just a few PDFs, old reports, dates, lists of names. Then came videos, grainy security footage, men in suits escorting dogs in tactical vests through underground bunkers, training sessions in languages Jalen couldn't understand. He clicked on one file labeled Phase Black. His breath caught as the footage played. There was Vanessa, much younger, her hair shorter, her voice calm but firm. She was commanding a team of dogs, Bear and Delta, through a live extraction. Gunfire echoed faintly. Bodies moved in the background. The dogs obeyed with terrifying precision. One tackled a fully armed man to the floor before he could even raise his weapon. Another dragged a child to safety. Then came a voiceover, distorted. These dogs are no longer pets. They are assets. Assets who don't question orders. Phase Black complete. Project Dogwalker, approved for field. Jalen leaned back, heart hammering. This wasn't just military training. This was something deeper, covert, experimental. And somehow Vanessa had walked away from it. Or maybe she had escaped. He barely had time to process when his phone buzzed. No number, just a message. They're coming for her. Don't go home. Go to the quarry, bring the map. Don't trust anyone, the quarry. That was where the coordinates on the map pointed. An old mining site just beyond city limits. Jalen's hands shook as he grabbed his jacket, slid the drive into his pocket, and slipped out the back door. He didn't want to wake his mom. He didn't know if he'd be back. Halfway across the city, Vanessa was already on the move. Her truck sped through the winding back roads, tires hissing on the wet pavement. Bear and Delta sat silent in the back seat, eyes fixed, bodies tense. She checked her mirrors again. A dark SUV had been behind her for 3 turns. Too close. Too steady. She didn't wait. Vanessa swerved suddenly onto a dirt path and cut her lights. The truck bumped through the undergrowth and came to a stop behind a thicket of trees. She grabbed her gear, flashlight, knife, the old communicator she'd kept buried in a lockbox. She waited. Minutes later, headlights passed by on the main road. Slow. Searching, she whispered to the dogs. We're not hiding anymore. Meanwhile, deep beneath a government building downtown, a small team huddled around monitors. One agent pointed at a blinking red dot moving steadily toward the quarry. He's following the trail. The man in the dark suit frowned. He's not supposed to even have the map. Another agent hesitated. Should we intercept? No, the suit replied. Let him get there. Let him see what she left behind. He won't survive it. Back on the road, Jalen's phone vibrated again. Another message popped up on screen. Just a single line. You're close. Trust the dogs. He looked around. Nothing but trees. Mud squelched under his sneakers as he climbed down a steep path, the old quarry opening up before him. Vast, abandoned, and surrounded by fences. A rusted gate lay open, chains swinging loosely in the wind. He stepped through. The map led him to an old trailer buried behind a rock outcrop. He approached slowly, every instinct telling him to turn back, but curiosity drove him forward. He knocked. No answer. He turned the knob and entered. The inside was dusty but not abandoned. A few old screens blinked faintly in standby mode. Paper files lined the shelves. Photos on the walls, some of the dogs, others of soldiers, missions, people in suits with black bars over their eyes. Then he saw her. Vanessa stood in the doorway, flashlight aimed at his chest. I was hoping you wouldn't come alone, she said quietly. Bear and Delta padded in behind her. The dogs stopped, stared at Jalen for a long beat. Then slowly, they sat. Vanessa lowered the light. They remember you. Jalen looked confused. Me? She nodded. They've seen you before. You just don't know it yet. Before he could ask, the trailer shook violently. A sound like thunder split the air outside. Helicopter blades. They both looked out the window. Lights swept across the trees. They found us, she said, grabbing a bag. We have to move, now. Jalen followed her out the back, the dogs already. Ahead, weaving through the brush like they knew every inch of the terrain. The chopper circled above. Men dropped down on wires, armed and moving fast. Vanessa led Jalen to a hidden trench under a false rock. They ducked inside as boots crunched overhead. I need you to listen, she whispered. You have something they want. That flash drive? It's not just information. It's evidence. And you, your name's in it. Jalen's breath caught. Why? Because your father, she paused, searching his face. He helped design the program. He walked away when he realized what they were using it for. Then he vanished. Jalen shook his head. My mom never talked about him, said he left. She thought he did, Vanessa said. But the truth is, they made him disappear. Outside. One of the dogs growled low. Delta's ears went flat. Bear moved in front of the hiding spot, then came footsteps. Closer. One of the soldiers barked, "Sweep the area. We know she's close." Another voice, calm and cold. "And if the boys, with her, bring him in. Alive, if possible." Jalen's heart pounded so loud he swore they'd hear it. Vanessa didn't flinch. Her hand rested on Bear's back, steady and calm. The dog didn't move. The footsteps came closer. One soldier stepped directly over